The room smelled of oil, metal, and quiet defeat. The faint tick of a half-repaired clock echoed like a question without an answer. Around the wooden table lay scattered tools, tiny screws, bent gears, and sketches that had been erased and redrawn too many times. In the dim evening light, a young watchmaker named Samuel sat with his head resting in his palm, eyes heavy, heart heavier. Once, this room had been full of dreams. Now, it felt like a waiting room for failure. A week earlier, Samuel had sworn that everything would change. He had stood before his mirror, sleeves rolled up, voice steady with confidence, promising that this would finally be the season he pushed through. He would rise early. He would practice daily. He would build something worthy of his name. For 7 days straight, he kept his word. He worked with passion. He stayed late into the night. His hands moved with purpose. Every finished piece filled him with pride. He imagined his workshop filling with customers. He imagined success knocking at his door. But on the 8th day, the fire faded. The work grew slow. The excitement thinned. The gears no longer clicked easily into place. A stubborn spring snapped. A rare part slipped from his fingers and disappeared under the floorboards. Every small failure felt heavier than the last success. Doubt crept in like fog. By the 10th day, Samuel began to arrive later. By the 12th, he worked half-heartedly. By the 14th, he stared at the door more than the clock. And tonight, on the 15th day, he was ready to walk away. He stood up slowly, pushing his chair back. The wooden legs scraped against the floor like a warning. He reached for his coat. His hand wrapped around the fabric. His foot moved toward the door. Then something caught his eye. In the corner of the desk, half buried beneath dust and failure, sat an old pocket watch. Rust hugged its edges. The glass was shattered like frozen lightning. Its hands were locked in time, pointing to a moment that no longer mattered. Samuel had found it long ago at a market stall. The seller had told him it was beyond saving. Samuel had bought it out of pride, convinced that his skill would prove everyone wrong. He never touched it again. Now, with his hand still clinging to his coat, Samuel stared at that forgotten watch. Slowly, he released his grip. He walked back to the table. He picked it up. It felt heavier than he remembered. He turned it over in his palm. Inside, the broken gears rested silently, waiting. Something inside his chest tightened. How many times had he done this before? How many dreams had he picked up with glowing hands only to abandon them when they demanded patience instead of excitement? He placed the watch on the desk and sat down again. Not because he felt inspired, because he felt exposed. That night, he did not aim to succeed. He aimed to stay. His hands shook slightly as he selected his tools. He opened the watch carefully. The damage was worse than he expected. Rust had eaten into the teeth of the gears. The spring was warped. The mechanism had been wounded slowly, over years of neglect. Fixing it would take time. Real time. Time without applause. Time without certainty. Time without results. For a long moment, Samuel simply stared at it. Then he made the smallest decision he had ever made. He cleaned one gear. That was all. He did not finish the watch. He did not restore its beauty. He only cleaned one gear. When he was done, his eyelids were heavy, his back ached, and doubt still whispered its poison. But one gear was clean. The next morning, Samuel returned. Not with burning excitement. Not with bold promises. Only with quiet commitment. That day, he cleaned 2 gears. On the 3rd day, he straightened a bent spring. On the 4th, he failed completely and had to undo everything he had done before. On the 5th, he almost quit again. But he stayed. Days folded into weeks. The town outside moved as always. People hurried through markets. Children laughed. Merchants argued. Life raced forward while Samuel moved at the pace of discipline. Slow, steady, often invisible. Some days he made beautiful progress. Some days he achieved nothing. Some days he left the workshop crushed by mistakes. Still, he returned. The broken pocket watch became his mirror. When he rushed, it punished him. When he forced it, it resisted. When he tried to shortcut, it failed. But when he worked patiently, deliberately, humbly, it responded. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the window, something changed. Samuel set the final gear into place. He held his breath. His fingers trembled as he nudged the mechanism. Tick. The sound was faint, uncertain. Then, tick, tick, tick. The watch lived again. Samuel did not shout. He did not jump. He simply sat there in silence as tears traced quiet paths down his cheeks. That night, he did not celebrate success. He honored endurance. The next months transformed his life quietly. He fixed more watches. His hands grew confident. His eyes needed no second guesses. Customers began to notice. At first, a widow brought him a broken heirloom that had belonged to her husband. Then a merchant brought a rare timepiece from overseas. Then a traveler brought a mechanism no one else in town could repair. Each time, Samuel accepted without boasting. He no longer chased praise. He chased precision. One evening, an elderly man entered the workshop. He carried a large wooden box and the weight of countless failures in his eyes. He placed the box on the table and opened it slowly. Inside lay a massive, ruined chronometer. Every gear was damaged. Every spring distorted. It looked like time itself had tried to destroy it. "I've carried this from city to city," the man said softly. No one could fix it. They all said the same thing. Impossible. Samuel did not answer immediately. He studied the machine. He felt its complexity. The weight of it did not excite him. It humbled him. "I will not promise success," Samuel said quietly. "But I promise effort." That effort lasted 3 months. 3 months of frustration. 3 months of rebuilding. 3 months of silence and persistence. There were nights Samuel slept in his chair. Days his hands bled. Moments he nearly destroyed the machine in anger. But discipline held him when motivation was long gone. When the final alignment was set, Samuel stepped back. The room was so quiet he could hear his own breath. Tick. The sound was deep, steady, unbreakable. The old man returned the following day. When the machine began to move again, his knees trembled. He wept without shame. The entire town heard of what Samuel had done. They called it a miracle. Samuel called it practice. Late one night, long after the town slept, Samuel sat alone in his workshop. The glow of a single lantern painted long shadows across the walls. The repaired pocket watch ticked faithfully beside him. The giant chronometer rested proudly in the corner. He realized then what had truly changed. Not his skill, not his reputation, but his identity. He was no longer someone who relied on how he felt to decide what he did. He was someone who did what needed to be done because it needed to be done. Discipline had reshaped his mind. It stripped away his excuses. It hardened his patience. It taught his hands endurance. It taught his heart pride that did not depend on applause. Years later, Samuel would train apprentices. Many of them arrived bright-eyed with dreams and impatience. They wanted quick mastery. They wanted fast success. They wanted shortcuts. Samuel never argued with them. He handed them a broken watch, and he told them only one thing: come back tomorrow. No matter how they felt, no matter how slow the work seemed, no matter how boring the process became, and those who returned learned the secret that changed his life. That discipline does not shout. It does not thrill. It does not entertain. It simply builds, piece by piece, day by day, choice by choice. And in doing so, it builds a person who cannot be stopped. The broken pocket watch that once represented abandoned dreams now marked every second of Samuel's life with quiet strength. Tick. The sound that once mocked him now guided him. And with every steady beat, it whispered the same truth over and over. Motivation may start the journey, but discipline is what carries you to the end.